All right, looks like the participants, looks like oh, still a few people joining, but it's slowed down right now. So I think maybe let's just start off with our launch for the Carbon Hack 22. Welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you here for the first ever hackathon that, both the hackathon that is the Green Software Foundation is running, but also the first ever Carbon Aware hackathon in the world as far as we're aware. So Carbon Hack is sponsored by the GSF member organizations Accenture, Avanade, Boston Consulting Group, Globant, Goldman Sachs, Intel Corporation, ThoughtWorks, UBS, and VMware. And also the data for the Carbon Aware Hackathon is very generously donated by What Time, who are a nonprofit based in the US, and David from What Time is here today. He'll be speaking to you later and talking to you a little bit about the actual API, the actual data source. We have now, I think, about 300 participants worldwide. So we hope that Carbon Hack 22 will become like a really impactful event to introduce carbon aware solutions to the world, to the market. And so we're really excited. Thank you so much for taking part in this. If you told me several years ago that now be a hackathon with hundreds of people participating in carbon awareness, I don't know what I would have said. Probably duh, of course. Just so optimistic. So what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to go over, the overview of the hackathon, talk a little bit about the timeline. Ismael's going to come on and he's going to talk more about the hackathon challenges and kind of the projects. We're going to demo, so Dan's here on the call from the Carbon Aware SDK team, SDK API team, and he's going to give a demo of the actual software itself. David from What Time is here to give an introduction to What Time and kind of basically the underlying data sources for this data, this carbon awareness. We're also going to talk about talk a little bit more details about how the hackathon is going to run. We're going to talk about the online sessions, the strategy you should employ, and some of the technical support that we'll be offering. Also talking more about the submission criteria, the judging process, and other things as well. And also also we'll put the Q&A. Oh, I think some of this stuff we might change the order a little bit. Don't worry about that. We'll get to it. And there'll be time for Q&A as well. Feel free to just drop your Q&A and questions as you go along into the Q&A section. You should see a button or well, it's Zoom. You see something at the bottom of Zoom to ask your questions as we go along. So let's go ahead. So, who am I? Who's this person talking to you? So my name is Asim Hussain. I'm the Executive Director and Chairperson of the Green Software Foundation. There's my website and various places you can find me on the internet if you ever wanted to find me on the internet. And what is Carbon Hack? So Carbon Hack is about building software that can reduce the carbon emissions generated through software. Carbon awareness specifically is this idea of doing more when the electricity is clean and doing less when it's dirty. So your project can be written in any language capable of connecting to the API. It may include code, and it may not. It might not include code, but it must be open source. So just to be very, very clear, the SDK, the Carbon Aware SDK, is like an API plus an SDK that you can use with the API. You can ignore that and just connect with the API directly, but you must use that API for your Carbon Aware solution. And we encourage kind of participation of any type at all, any kind of role. There's multiple different types of people that are required to kind of build, any of these solutions. So we encourage any participation of any type at all. And we're really looking for creative and kind of innovative solutions to green software and to carbon aware computing. But we'll go through some of the judging criteria later on as well, so you can see how some of the criteria will be judged on. And if you want to, if you've not seen it already, just that's the link to go to. We have a hosted version of the API, which you can always go to and you can use for the duration of the hackathon. It is hosted version, so it's shared by everybody. It might hit users limits, which is why when you register, you'll also be given a key, so you can host your own API, which will be your usage limits because it's your own key. But if you just want to use like the shared version, you can just go straight and use that one if that's what you want. Thank you again very much to our sponsors. We have a pretty impressive prize pool of $100,000 US. So each of our sponsors, so third prize is $15,000, second prize is $25,000, and the first prize winner receives $40,000. I might just go quit being the director of the foundation and come just join the foundation, because that's a pretty hefty prize fund. We also have about $20,000. Those are just the top three. So the top three will get those prizes, but we also have about $20,000, which will be giving a smaller prizes to a variety of other winners. So we'll be giving prizes for, most innovative and creative solutions, most polished solutions, most ready to go, most insightful solution driving sustainability and awareness. We're giving prize money for that also, and just amongst other ones as well. So even if you're not one of the top 3 prize winners, you will get there is other money, there is other kind of prizes available for you. So everybody's not a winner, but a lot of people should hopefully be winners in this hackathon. And once again, thank you so much to our sponsors, and also again to What Time for donating the data for the API. So to getting started with a project, so you can publish a project, and to continue to, so today's the start of the hackathon. You can publish a project to work on. So you can go onto the Taikai website and just create a project and start working on it. You can work on it until November the 4th. So, and if you're interested in joining a project, maybe you don't have an idea of your own just yet, and that's absolutely fine. This is a very new space. If you find, and this is just examples you've got on the screen, there are very interesting examples. These are examples with open positions. If you go on the projects page, you'll see the projects with open positions. You can go click on them and you can find the positions that are available, and you can go join those teams. And we recommend, reaching out to the project owners directly. We've got a matchmaking function on the Taikai website, or if you want to use Discord, go to Discord and join Carbon Hack 22 on Discord and reach out to the project owners, or just directly on Taikai as well. But those are the 2 things you want to do: either publish a project to work on it yourself and with others, or join a project. Those are the 2 ways you can get involved in getting started in this space. So the timeline, so the hacking period starts today, 13th of October, and it finishes 4th of November. So you have 3 weeks to work. We are going to have live sessions similar to this, live sessions every Thursday from now to the end, so the 20th of October, the 27th, and the 3rd of November. And you feel free, and we'll also still be engaging you via email and Discord to really help you problem solve and resolve any technical issues. Us and kind of the other people in the foundation, helping out with the hackathon. Our goal is to help you build the best solution possible. So, we want you to be a success. So, reach out, ask for help. We're there for you. I'll share a lot more on that later. Submissions close November the 4th. Projects are shortlisted by the Green Software Foundation by November the 8th. There's going to be an initial shortlisting phase, and then the judges will deliberate from November the 9th, and then awards are distributed during our closeout event on November the 10th. But essentially, November the 4th is the end, and then after that, there'll be a judging period, and then the prizes and the awards will be announced on November the 10th. Just again, please remember, any projects that do not utilize the Carbon Aware API, the SDK API, will not be considered. This is a project. This is Hackathon has to leverage that SDK. And again, these are the online sessions. So after this event, there's going to be 3 more live sessions every Thursday to feed you, inspiration and insight into carbon awareness. So each live session will offer unique conversations and perspectives featuring, industry experts, Q&A sessions to help keep you engaged, energized. And again, these sessions are for you to help you really, and they inspire you, help you answer your questions, and help you build a really great product. these are the dates, 20th, 27th, and the 3rd. The registration link to each live session will be the same. So you'll see it's not on this page. Oh, so there it is. It's grunsoft.org Hack22 webinar. That link will always point to whatever the next session is. So after today, we'll point to the 20th, and then after the 20th, point to 27th. It'll always point to the next link. So if you just want to bookmark one URL, bookmark that one. I'll always take you to the next webinar. And yep, so this is the first Carbon Aware hackathon ever. So there's very few examples of carbon aware computing. There's some very big examples, but they're very rare. So there's a chance you're going to need help. Okay, you're going to need support, help supporting your idea and just navigating the new API. You might even need help resolving some technical issues related to your build. And so throughout this kind of 3-week period, we'll offer strategy and technical support, just really to help perfect your submission. Again, kind of our goal is to help you build a great product. So reach out to us on Discord. A number of us are hanging on Discord for you. Sign up for our weekly 1-hour sessions. We'll also be emailing you on kind of several emails a week to help you kind of along with information. We also have developers and researchers on the bench to help you who are kind of familiar with the Carbon Aware API, and approaches to carbon aware computing. So again, we're here to help you, with technical support and strategy. Even if you want to discuss ideas like that, you've never built anything like this before, like raise it with us. I've been thinking about carbon awareness for years, so I'm more than happy to help out. Project submission. So at the end of the 3-week hacking period, we're going to close submission entries on November the 4th. All projects are submitted via a pitch, and all pitches will include a video presentation and a written submission. Both components must be submitted on the Taikai platform by midnight on Friday, GMT, I believe, midnight on Friday, November the 4th. So that is when that's the final moment. You have to submit the video and the pitch by that date. So how do you wow us with your video? So the video must be a maximum of 2 minutes long. Structure your video clearly, convey the problem, convey the solution, what you accomplished, and your next steps. We suggest dedicating about 30 seconds to each topic area. There's 4 topic areas. Dedicate about 30 seconds to each one, and stay within the time limit. Don't waste your time too much doing a walkthrough. Focus on the highest value features first, and will just really matter from a user experience perspective. And that's how to wow us with your video. This is TBD. We'll provide more details of this later on. We're just exploring right now, providing you with help, professional help to create your video format. We don't know how this is going to be structured just yet, so pay attention to future communications that are going to come out from us. But we're going to, at the very least, provide a certain number of slots with a professional video producer who will help you to craft your final video. We don't know exactly details of that. We will provide more of that later on. How to wow us with your written submission. So our advice is don't leave the written component to the last minute. If needed, download. We've got a PowerPoint template under the resources tab on Taikai. We've got a PowerPoint template for your pitch. Download that now. Take a look at it. Start drafting answers to the following questions now, as they may come up during your development. It's good to at the end of the day, you need to submit this pitch. So it's right now, it's important to understand what your pitch needs to contain. So we recommend taking a look at that now. So what is the solution? Now, what is the problem project is solving? Try and think about that in terms of your pitch. What is the solution that you're proposing? Think about that again. And how does that solution solve that problem? What has the team accomplished during the hackathon? You might not have accomplished everything you wanted to achieve, but tell us what your vision was at the start. And what is the impact your solution is going to have on the industry and the kind of whole challenge that we're facing right now? Like, think about that right now. And then what actions, resources are required to continue the project even further? Because, you know, we don't want you just to end. If there's a good solution, we want you to continue. And what is the value of the solution? You know, include like any URLs, the prototype, the GitHub to the website, and a link to your YouTube video, which will contain your video pitch. So that's kind of what the written submission will contain. And again, you have to wow the judges with your written and video submission. So take a look at that now and start thinking about that now. I know a lot of us are engineers or solution problem solvers. We want to drive straight into the solution. Think about the fact they're going to have to pitch the solution. How will that pitch look like now? So these are our judges that are for the day. The projects will be evaluated on 3 criteria: vision, feasibility, and impact. And each of these 3, so it's going to be, each of your solutions is going to be judged on vision, feasibility, and impact, and have a score of 1 to 5. 5 is the best score. You know, what is the vision? Like, how are you thinking? You know, we'll have more details of that in the package that goes out to kind of like flesh that out. You know, feasibility. You know, how feasible is this solution? How likely is it of being adopted? You know, impact. You know, one of my favorite sayings is, would you rather be the head of a chicken or the tail of an ox? So are you solving a niche area, but solving it really well, which is going to have big impact? Or are you solving a big area and just, but getting a broad breadth of what is your impact going to be? Like, these of this problem going to be? So that's how your projects will be judged. Oh, sorry, that I have, I forgot to read talking points. Okay. Vision. So judges want to be inspired. So they are looking for innovation. Luckily for you, there aren't many examples of carbon aware software, so chances are your project is already kind of quite visionary. I'm really excited by just seeing the projects that have been proposed right now. They're already blowing my mind. To score well here, know how your project compares to other carbon aware projects, you know, out there, and what sets it apart from the rest. Like, what is your vision? By feasibility, you know, judges will be looking for a convincing proof of concept prototype. Not a fully working solution does everything you wanted to accomplish, but, you know, we're not going to accomplish that in 3 weeks, but you're going to do a proof of concept. Judges will evaluate how easy or hard it is to get a minimum viable product post hackathon. Okay. Improve your chances to score high by making sure your pitch and video offer indications of an implementation roadmap. Like, how are you going to get from where you are now to the future? And what do we mean by impact? So can your project make a real difference? Does it have potential for wide adoption? Projects that provide convincing evidence of impact will receive high impact scores from the judges. For example, shaving 1 gram of CO2 for every single web page is not much, but if that web page is visited 100,000 times a day, that would be saving 36 tons of CO2 per year for just one website. So that's actually, so initially we're seeing an impact of a small scale, but because it can be adopted at a wide scale, the impact of the solution can be seismic in software. It's actually one of the most exciting aspects of why software is such a big, can have such an outsized impact in this whole climate battle that we're fighting right now. Alternatively, it could be a solution with a low adoption, but with a large impact. Like, for every ton of chlorine, 2 tons of CO2 is produced from electricity consumption alone. 1 plant can produce 1 million tons of chlorine a year. So if just 1 plant became carbon aware, you might reduce CO2 emissions by kind of 1 or 2 million tons a year. So that's like small thing, but big, you know, big amount. Awesome. So I think now we've got Dan, who was one of the developers on the Carbon Aware, one of the team leads in the Carbon Aware SDK, and he's now going to give a demo of the application. So Dan, I think you need to take control. You need to share your screen, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Hello,
I will
everyone.
stop sharing.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you, Asim. That looks absolutely fantastic, what you just introduced. This hackathon looks really exciting. So I suppose it's, let me just share my screen before I start saying silly things. And then, There we go. So yeah. So hopefully you can see my screen right now. Hopefully the proportions are adequate as well. So yeah. So really exciting SDK. This is basically the first release, and what we wanted to show you here, and apologies for anybody who's been attending the previous webinars where we've already covered some of those aspects, but for the purpose of everybody joining today for the official launch, here is a quick walk through the API. So, you know, basically Carbon Aware is about using the energy when it's the cleanest. So here we've got 3 categories of endpoints that will help you achieve that. So sorry, before I carry on, the first thing I wanted to say also is that to access that API, you can just use the link that was mentioned before. So I'll just do that so that I can show you that it definitely works. I've also deployed the application on the local machine. So I obviously get exactly the same. In both cases, what time key is set up. We'll come back to that in a second. But basically that gives us access to real data about real energy emission, carbon emissions, which obviously makes everything we're doing relevant, or everything you'll be doing using the API more relevant. So like I said, we've got 3 categories of endpoints. At the top, we've got the ones that say about location, which are about what may have happened in the past. So you can go back through consumption and check what the carbon intensity was at a given time, and for a given location or for multiple locations. And then we've got forecast, which, as it says, is kind of like about the future. I believe the our message will give you some details about this, but I believe it goes about 24 hours in the future. And then you've got averages, which in this case just gives you an idea of the carbon intensity, but rather than doing for a very specific and small amount of time, you might want to do it for, you know, a whole day or something like that. So this is what we have here. So in the interest of demonstration and making sure that things didn't fail too much, I've tried to prepare some of the data on the endpoints and on the other side so that we can go through some of them with working data, just because, you know, I wanted to make sure that I didn't get the parameters wrong. So I guess the first one you probably want to look at are some of those ones, which are basically give me the emissions for the given period of time. So here I've done an example with East US. I think it defaults to the 1st of March, so that's what we're using here. And in this case, it's for a whole day. And so as you can see, it comes back with the carbon intensity for each time slot and for the duration. So the reason why I wanted to do this is because in a second I'll show you the average, and obviously in some scenarios you'll probably just want to go for the average so that it's easier to consume and less and a bit greener, because you won't have to do the calculations as well. So yeah, so another thing I forgot to mention is that the locations are based on the Azure locations at the moment. Obviously, one of the things you might want to do is create your own data sources. I think I've selected somewhere here just to show you where we set this up. No, actually, I did close that thing. So in the documentation, let me just go through this quickly. So this is the repository that hopefully a lot of you are already familiar with. And if you go inside sources and locations, you should be able to find the data source that we're currently using. And so, you know, feel free to maybe leverage that. Obviously, in that case, you'll have to deploy your own version of the API, but in the future, you might want to mix data sources. Currently, we offer WattTime. So this is it. So obviously, in this case, we've got the average. We've got all of the data points, or all the emission that's been happening for a given location for a whole day in East US. And then if we maybe go into the average intensity for the exact same parameters, then obviously we get something that's a lot more, that's basically straight to the point. One thing I should highlight as well is that the carbon intensity is given in gram per kilowatt hour. I think that's the standard we're trying to use. And so in the event of using different data sources, the emissions might be measured in different formats. And so we try and standardize this through the API or through the SDK. And then you've got the forecast endpoint. And so in the case of the forecast endpoint, you'll want to look in the future. So in this case, we're basically looking for a 6-hour window or 5-hour window, or 7-hour window. I don't know. I'm not okay. 7-hour window, I think. And in this case, what we're doing is the same. We're basically checking what's the best time slot in terms of carbon intensity during that period. So I think what we can see in the output is that we get all of the data back. We get the optimal data points. And the reason why this is an error is because there might be multiple locations or multiple time slots that have the exact same rating. And then we get all of the data back. So if you look through this, basically you get every slot as requested. So here, maybe if I so this is something I haven't tried before. I did this, so let's just try it quickly. But let's hope the demo codes are with me right now. So yeah, so the time slots are basically now for 75 minutes. One thing that you can see here is that the slots are still every 5 minutes. I think that's something we've got standard in the background, and we're discussing about changing that. So this is it. So obviously in this case, if you were thinking about what's going to happen in the future, when is the best time to send that to do this between UK West and Germany North, in that time slot, you would probably want to go for UK with a rating of 420.83 grams per kilowatt hour. And I think if we look through the data, you can see that the ratings are very varied, and they go from 400 to, like, I think in Germany it's like 750 or something like that. So the idea is that you get that very quickly. And so yeah, just finally, I think I'm probably around time. Another endpoint that you'll probably want to use is basically assessing what's the best location to send your workload to, and obviously at what time. Actually, this is about the past, but it basically gives you an idea of what you might want to do. And so in here, if we look, we've basically tried to do this for a few locations, quite varied actually. And funnily enough, usually France is rated good, but in this case, California comes back with 20 grams per kilowatt hour, which to me seems extremely low. So that's interesting and good. If at any point you see data coming back as 0, like in this example, that's likely because you're looking outside of the range where data is available, and therefore you're probably out of bounds. And so it might not come back with an error. So just be careful about that part. And I think that's it. So just to conclude, this SDK is there to help you have some sort of standardized way of accessing those data sources, whether you're using WhatTime right now, which already is you should all have received the code, by the way. As you register to the hackathon, you should get an email with login credentials to set up watt time for yourself if you wanted to, but if you want to just go faster, feel free to use this endpoint. And so this SDK will allow you to, decide on the best location or the best time or combination of both to run a specific workload at a specific time, or to simply understand what the rating is right now, whether the energy is green or not in your area or in the desired area, and make decisions based on that. Asim, I think that's it for me. Probably give it back to you now. I'm just going to check if there are any questions, if you wanted me to cover that, but I suppose we'll come back to this later.
Thank you very much, Dan. There is a question, but maybe we can come back to it a bit later on. And I think there's a question which it will be answered soon anyway. Let me just, if you can stop sharing, Dan, I will.
I can
cover my screen. Yeah, okay. Here we go. I will share back to here. I think actually. Oh, that's David from from What Time, and I think I may have to be the slide master for you, David. So
yeah, that works great, Asim. I'll just give you a cue when to go to the next slide, and we can do that now. Great. So my name is David Younan-Montgomery. Really happy to be with you all today. I work on partnerships with What Time. We are extremely excited to be supporting the Green Software Foundation and creating tools for developers to help reduce emissions. As a nonprofit, that is our mission. It's what we wake up every day thinking about. And we really kind of our kind of focus is on helping our partners drive more real world impact. We do that by providing real-time, location-specific grid emissions data across North America, Europe, and Australia. We focus on marginal emissions, which are the emissions that are caused by using electricity at a specific place and time. And our partners like Google, Microsoft, and the GSF use this data to create products and tools that shift load to cleaner times and places. And so to support this hackathon, What Time is providing access to marginal emissions data through the GSF SDK. So I thought it'd be helpful to just give a brief orientation to the data itself, how we create it, what our data sources are, and I know there's a couple questions in the chat along those lines, so I'll try to answer those as we go. Next slide. So carbon awareness is fundamentally about understanding where and when electricity is consumed. This is what determines its emissions impact. And that's because grids are constantly balancing supply and demand. And to do that, balancing authorities they ramp up power plants up or down in line with demand. And what you're looking at here on this slide is like a hypothetical resource curve. So each of these bars would represent a generating resource in a specific grid. And generally, cheaper generators are dispatched first, and those are usually also the cleanest. And so the emissions that I cause when I plug in are tied to the marginal unit at the far end of that stack. It's the unit that would ramp up in order to meet new demand at a specific place and time. And so the marginal emissions rate represents how emissions would change if you make that change on the grid, and they're tied to that marginal unit or marginal units. In this case, you're looking at a gas-fired unit. Each additional megawatt hour of electricity use causes 950 pounds of CO2 to be emitted. Next slide. And which unit is marginal changes throughout the day. It changes every few minutes. So, at another point in time in this day, you could have a much higher carbon intensity of using electricity. More than double in this case. And that's because the resource that would be responding to new load at that point is much dirtier. It's a much more carbon intensive fuel source. Next slide. And so really kind of like What Time's fundamental purpose is to bring transparency, is like pull back the curtain on who's responding when your load changes. Sometimes using electricity causes clean power to produce. Next slide. And sometimes it causes a dirtier unit to respond. This is the concept of, this is what we mean when we talk about marginal emissions. It's a big difference between marginal and average emissions, which is another metric you may have heard about. Without getting too much into the details, you can think about average emissions as the average of all of their generating resources that are on that dispatch stack that you just looked at. But if you think about it, like, decisions that we make are not going, like if you're in France and you have a lot of nuclear baseload, for example, nothing that any of us do are going to make that nuclear plant run more or less. It's going to keep chugging along, doing whatever it's doing. It's going to be a dispatchable resource that actually changes in response to load. And that's what marginal is designed to detect. And that's the data that you need to inform carbon aware applications. So that if there are other questions about that distinction, we can go more into the detail, but that's kind of the concept at a high level. Next slide. And so how WattTime does this, we take an empirical approach, which is based on publicly available continuous emissions monitoring system data. So that tells you the emissions of all the major thermal power plants. And then we look also at the publicly available generation data, hourly generation data that's very easily accessible in North America, Europe, and all the places that we cover. And then we use various machine learning techniques to look at all of the various grid conditions that are associated with those emissions and generation events in order to say, for a specific time and place, how would emissions change based on what we've seen in the past? How would emissions change if there's a change on the grid at a specific place and time? And so we're looking at things like price, we're looking at things like transmission and congestion, we're looking at demand, we're looking at renewable energy curtailment, and all of that feeds into the marginal operating emissions rate, or MOER, and that is what you what you're provided from WattTime's API and from the SDK. That is in pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour, and we offer that both as a historical look back, so you can look back up to 3 years, and you can also get that signal in real time, which is updated every 5 minutes, and as a 72-hour forecast. I think by default, if you query the SDK, it will be a 24-hour forecast, but you should be able to define a 72-hour forecast and get that data as well. This is a small map, but you can see WattTime's the data coverage area here. We're covering most of North America, Europe, and Australia. And we can go to the next slide. And this is what that can look like over 24 hours. This is an example from Australia, about a year ago. And this is a helpful example just because it illustrates really some of the potential here. You can see that, right when this 24-hour period starts in the middle of the night, the emissions rate is very high. It's about as high as it gets, 2,000 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour. That probably means that electricity is being served by a very carbon intensive resource like coal or oil. Every time that marginal emissions rate drops, that represents an opportunity to shift load towards those times and away from the higher times to reduce emissions. And when you see that line drop to 0, like it does at 3 a.m., that represents a time when there is so much renewable energy that's being generated that it outstrips demand and it's being curtailed, or it effectively can't be used, it's being dumped, right? So the more load, the more consumption you shift to that curtailment time where the marginal emissions rate drops to 0, the more zero emissions renewable electricity you are soaking up that otherwise never would have made it to the grid. So and then you can see there's much finer grained variance in that marginal emissions rate as well. But those drops to 0 are kind of like that's the money time. Next slide. I think that might be the end of my slides. Yeah. So just to reiterate, the data is available as historical data, real time, and as a 72-hour forecast. And I see some questions in the chat, and I think we're going to go into a Q&A anyway. So maybe we can start the discussion. Asim.
As in, should we deal with those questions at the end? Is that what you're asking, or?
Yeah, we need to go to Ismael first,
Okay.
and then we'll have a Q&A after that.
Okay, let's do that. Let me put the camera back on. Yep, let's do that. So thank you very much, David. We'll stay on, and we'll come back to Q&A later where we'll answer those questions. And welcome, Ismael. And it's a go time for you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Really exciting. So that we've been seeding these ideas, and it began when I joined the project. There was no one there, and suddenly it's exploded, and we've got an incredible movement beginning to gather. And for me, the kind of biggest highlight here is not the prizes, it's the attention. It's the fact that if out of this come 30 ideas that can be implemented and make a difference to the world, then the impact of this hackathon will go way beyond 3 winners or 10 winners. So this is potentially a milestone. I think we might go look back on this hackathon and the people involved in it in 5 years' time, in 3 years' time, and say it began there. That's where this thing really scaled. This was a milestone. That's what it feels like to me. So it's exciting. Could we move to the next slide? So who are we? All of you here and more generally. There are 317 people signed up on Taikai, 317 innovators, and they have launched 111 projects. 83 of those are solo projects, either by design or by accident. They're still waiting to be joined by others and formed teams. And there are 28 teams already formed. So there are 49 projects mobilizing 111 people. And of those, the majority, about 36 of them, have been published. So you can go out and you can go to Taikai and see what is there, see what people are working on, those 111 people. Some of those are in draft, 13 of those are in draft. So those will not be visible to you. If you are one of those in draft projects, I encourage you to publish, because that will mean that you get more visibility from us. So in terms of the support that we can offer, the encouragement, the connections, etc., it will be easier to support you if you are live than if you are in draft. And if you would like to recruit more support or build a team around your idea, then the sooner you are out of draft, the better. And it's important to also say that once you are published, it's not final. You can always refine, change the wording, change the idea. It's just a way of saying it's happening. We are here. So this is the current distribution. Next. So out of these projects, there are 12 projects that are explicitly advertising for positions. So if you've just joined, you haven't got your own idea, perhaps you'd like to join a team, there are 12 projects that you can find in the matchmaking section of Taikai. The ones in the screen are just a sample, but there are 12 projects and 18 open positions. And you can see how wide-ranging they are from the snapshot. So some people are looking for expressions of interest from project managers and active listening. Others are looking for full stack developers, for video editors, for infrastructure experts, UX and UI practitioners, planners, etc. So whatever it is you are into, whatever your skill set or the area you want to learn about and grow, then these are opportunities. If you see a project that you like that has not advertised a position, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not looking. It might mean they're not looking, but you can always reach out directly on Taikai and send them a message or ask on Discord. So this is amazing when you think about the fact that the hackathon is just starting right now, and already there is motion and already there is traction. What is the next slide, please? So what are these projects tackling at the moment? One big area is carbon aware cloud computing. So there are projects looking at carbon-aware job scheduling, location shifting of jobs, CI, continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines, load balancing that is carbon-aware, zone monitoring, so that you can just check when a particular zone in Azure or in GCP or in AWS is green and another one isn't, for example. Carbon accounting, location shifting, I got that twice, apologies, routing, rate limiting, demand shaping. So these are all the kinds of challenges that are being informed by green carbon aware innovation. Next slide, please. Then Asim's analogy of, I can't remember what the saying was, head of something or tail of something. This is a tail of big beasts. So what are existing applications? You're not inventing the application, you are just extending it so it can be made carbon aware. So this is a very small change that you might be doing, but it could be huge if adopted by an established ecosystem. So one of them is the SDK API itself of the Green Software Foundation. So the tool that you will be using itself can be extended. So some people have discussed adding languages, for example, to it, or adding sort of APIs that can be powered. So at the moment, it supports what time, it supports electricity maps, but there are, for example, if you are like me from Mexico, you might want to tap into a different data set to be able to get information. Also, the SDK allows you to use not just live data APIs, but also historic data sets. So if you've got a data set from an electricity provider somewhere, you could use it as well. So that's one area of extension. If you do it and make it easy for others to use, then you've extended this app and you've empowered lots of different projects. Material UI, how do you make styled components carbon aware? Serverless framework, how do you deploy your lambdas? There's 80% of serverless functions are deployed via the serverless framework. So there are people working on making that carbon aware. Kubernetes, delaying the emails that you send, particularly bulk emails, to green time. So MailChimp, SendGrid, plugins, extensions, integrations. Development framework like Java Spring Boot, making sure that the apps that are built on that framework are out of the box, can be carbon aware. Zeus, this is deep neural networks and AI. You have Azure, AWS, GCP extensions. So this is a whole area that people are targeting, and there might be other tools you might want to target. Like if somebody could create a Zapier integration for this, you've suddenly allowed 2,000 apps to become carbon aware, or 5,000 apps. So there's a lot of room here. Next slide, please. Carbon aware business applications. So there are people working on CO2 tracking and optimizing of company-wide or location-specific hardware use. So by using the SDK, combining with other tools to actually measure how many CO2 emissions are being produced by each machine in your different company offices. So you can identify patterns, aggregate, you could distribute actual role, sort of job functions, company functions in a carbon aware way. Similarly, the CO2 tracking and optimization of company-wide or location-specific software use. So are people using software in their own machines that is particularly electricity intensive? And is it used at particular times or particular departments or particular functions? So how do you make your entire business planning and operations carbon aware? Business report generation scheduling, this is a very small thing that could be huge, because the amount of business reports being generated every day is probably eye-watering. So can you, and it's almost never time sensitive within green or dirty energy timeframes. So report generation, crypto mining, all of us in environmental work and digital missions have a very, very strong objection or prejudice toward crypto and Web3. However, it is happening. It is huge. So if it's going to be happening and it is going to be consuming a lot of energy, can you make it green? So there are projects already working on this in this hackathon. Inventory management, financial operations, optimization of CO2 and cost usages at the same time. What is the best place to do both at once? So yes, this is another domain. Next area, please. Next slide. Carbon aware web development specifically. So already mentioned UI components and green mode design. Can you create websites that increase or reduce their functionality in accordance to the electricity consumption of the grid? There is a very good example in Branch Magazine, if you want to Google it. So there are many areas where you could do this. People here are also working on content delivery and making that carbon aware. They are also looking at much more granular web page CO2 calculations that do not just take account of averages and trends, but actually look at the web page, the location, and the machine that is consuming it, which could have really big implications in terms of the approach that we have to metrics, which remains, I think, it misses important dimensions that would be covered by this. And CMS and backend frameworks mentioned Java Spring Boot. There are also people here working on new CMS implementation, so you can do content management systems that are carbon aware from the word go. Next slide, please. Carbon aware lifestyles, empowering consumers and users and individuals to live a carbon aware life, regardless of what the platforms are doing. So you may not be able to control how much data is consumed by a video or a game or your VR set or the metaverse, but you can control when you consume those things. So schedulers that tell you now is a good time to game if you want to have fun and be green at the same time. The ways of charging your devices that only pull electricity at green times. Task-focused electricity appliance, whether that be directly embedded in the appliances or just alerts or apps or schedulers on your phone that tell you now is a good time to put on the washing machine, the dishwasher, the electric oven, electric cookers, hair dryers, air conditioning, etc. So these can be very simple tools that have very exponential effects. Next. And people in the hackathon are also already working on making federated learning carbon aware, so it is less polluting and its footprint is less, but also gamifying learning the patterns of green software and carbon aware code. So you can expand and train and teach and spread this. And this is, I really like this particular application because so many people are coming into tech every year, and that's growing every year. So if we can educate people coming in or experts who want to branch out or develop this skill set, it'd be fantastic to have resources that are engaging and good. So this is one area. And I believe, lastly, there are solutions working in carbon aware machine learning and AI space. I already mentioned deep neural networks, and there are also more generic approaches to training jobs, scheduling and allocations of machine learning jobs and AI. I believe that might be my last slide, but let's just check. Yes, that is. So this is no longer, when we began this in the last couple of weeks, we had project ideas. These are no longer just project ideas. These are actual people working to make this happen. And so you can see how excited I am, because if half of these ideas take off, if the judges who are, the massive conglomerates or are the top consultancies get excited by some of these, your idea could not just take off in your own project, but actually in the way the world works. So thank you very much for your participation. And I hope many more of you will add many more ideas and join many more teams.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ismael. And thank you, everybody. So maybe just, I think we've been answering quite a few questions in the chat as we've gone through. I think maybe just to highlight a couple of questions that have been asked. There have been some that have been asked regarding kind of like can the application just build an end user application? I know Ismael's been talking through this as well, but an end user application or computing application, as long as it uses the API, we're happy. As long as it uses the API and builds something that makes somebody or something do more when the electricity is clean and less when it's dirty, it's fine. And that's absolutely fine. I don't think there are any more questions in the chat. In the last few minutes, does any of the other panelists want to come on? Were there any questions you wanted to highlight that we've answered on the typing chat? Oh, there's one more question coming up. Oh, it's not a question. It's a thank you for the answers. No problem, James. Well, I think that's it then. I think I'll just reiterate what Ismael said, which is we're all really excited to see this hackathon take off. Like, Dan's been involved in the hackathon project and building the solution for a long time now, and we're just really excited to see everybody here and to see you all take part. As Ismael said, there's times I've looked at the last 3 years and I just look at some of the things that we did 3 years ago, and the people that are involved in those very small efforts 3 years ago, they're the people that are now 3 years later, at the forefront of this brand new field of green computing and kind of, inventing, whole areas of it. So this is a very early stages in this area, and yeah, it's really important, time as well. So these are the important links you should make sure you have. The Hack 22 is the Taikai website. The SDK link to the SDK. The API takes to the API. The slides I'm recording will be available and shared after this session, so we will send this out via email. And so, yeah, so I think that's it. We're at time. So I think there's one other question. We'll try and answer that. Type it here, but yeah, thank you so much for everybody's attention and time, and best of luck for the hackathon. Thank you very much.
Good job, everyone. See you later.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm gonna leave now. Cheers. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.